What's the statement?
That's just recording, right?
George, you're a hero. 6 rounds yesterday.
I just listened to
Let's start our podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I'm the guest podcaster. I'm like the surrogate Bartek.
And then
The shiny head distracts people when I'm playing.
Yeah, can you render the screen card shot from You have no idea what's going on.
Great time.
So how do we put out the blind lists? Do we just put down a cell phone or something? So we put down your blind stuff?
Sorry, what did you say?
Who am I playing? That'll do. Alright, what are you playing? Why? Nog dansen leren? So you prefer English as well?
I pretty much got everything set up in terms of camera.
try to avoid moving the clock because right now it's still in stream.
Minimalist. Come on! Come on!
So there's my castle there.
I'll find some
How far from the
But it's unfortunately needed by a friend of mine.
Doesn't matter. Hey, you're the one who has it.
Yes, I am. Spaniard.
Ah, okay.
He's a little short here.
Oh, I see. There's your table.
Some blood test model and said,
Possible to train
this course is better.
You will play Xerxes too. I will play Keylyssa. Yeah, I have chosen my list. So it's the Calaban against the Archidon. Also the Soul. So we have Keylyssa, Calaban. Calaban. Yeah. Alright, so let's make the all-important roll. Let's actually see who we know we can, despite having +1 this time by 1. So your side, sir.
All first. 1.
Okay, that means I will start.
Hey, I figured it's
So the same thing as what we play or advanced move or something.
advanced move. I can do
That if I
that.
go first.
Yep. I haven't started all weekend. No, there's not.
Oh, well. That's very good thing the next tournament.
Yes. Yes. He seems to be more and more
Well, I'm 15. People are playing faster this.
Yeah.
With longer and longer flip ranges, so.
Check. Am I right? 18 minutes.
What do you have magical attacks? You don't have magical attacks? At all? Literally at all? Yes, heal, trim,
Yeah.
Sorry,
That house is kind of shit. Your Calaban list has the edge of the double.
maximum units, and the operators, and the spin on the blind and the red.
Is the wall and the engine of like a single thing or
George?
Yes.
It's not, we're playing not to be simple, we're playing heavy metal.
That's the worst.
First few makes you stealth and use charges.
Yes.
Charges is pretty much. The Krayas, they are plus 2 plus 2, right? But not easy. So, do you have anything that can see through clouds? Krayas? Do you have anything else? Cloud tech pairing system. You take one player and put it face down on that table. And then we do the same at this table. Your flight speed 900. And then you, the other two this thing, take one of those and put it one player and Tiberians put it face down in the middle. And we do the same. Do you have any questions on my list?
It's not painted. Arcane Vortexes.
Yeah, we developed it for the heavy metal ace.
All right. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. We are coming to you live from Amsterdam, from the ClogCon2017 team tournament. This is round 1, and we are featuring the team Ragnarok versus the Danish dudes, quote unquote. And we're just getting the table set up right now, and I'm going to just quickly adjust the graphics and make sure all of the relevant recording devices have been turned on, and then we'll get stuck into this game.
So anything from Calaban after this? the city is not hit. No. And what's your idea? He's pretty good at it. He's playing. Parasite, Augmentation, Time It's range 8 power 12 plus 2. If it destroys a hitbox living on it or a model, we get to make a full advance of that model, immediate attack, and it gets. No, my feed is whenever one of my models destroys one of your models, it gets either point, and then you make immediately press.
Oh, that's how. Yeah,
Minions versus Sigma.
Yeah.
Okay, Keylyssa going into Calaban.
And he has dark power, so he gets an additional die and it's magic attack cancel, so it's closed. So he can cast on those tables. 7.
Celebration. Okay, and we have Nikolai and
word, so you're not going to do that. Yeah, I know. Yes, that's right.
Okay, so now that we have the graphical elements of the cast correctly arranged, we can take a look at the scenario. We can also take a look at the armies that the respective players have brought. The scenario that we'll be playing today is the Pit, scenario number 1. Actually, that is incorrect. Excuse me, this is the wrong graphic. We are actually playing scenario number 4, Breakdown, also known as the handlebars, the dumbbell scenario. Now, Breakdown features 3 scenario elements, all located on the midline between the 2 players. Namely 2 circular zones which are actually touching a rectangular zone in the middle of the map. The flanking circular zones obviously only being able to be captured by infantry and warcasters, and the central rectangular zone being able to be captured by battle engines, warjacks, warbeasts and warcasters. So right now what we see is the players are just quizzing each other on particular rules of their respective armies and models. So we're going to take that opportunity to take a look at the armies that they have brought. On the right hand side of the screen we have Sverre Reikvam. I hope I have pronounced that correctly. He is bringing a Keylyssa list. So a man very much to my heart. I always enjoy casting Retribution because I enjoy playing Retribution, and Keylyssa is my favorite warcaster in Retribution, bar none. So I'm always happy to see her on table. So she is bringing a Banshee, a Hydra and Silas Wishnator for her battle group. She is bringing 2 units of House Guard Halberdiers, both with the UA, 2 units of Stormfall Archers, an Arcantric Force Generator, 3 Arcanists, and a free Fane Knight. Obviously, this list being in the Defenders of Ios theme, which means that we will be seeing an advanced move from at least one of the Halberdier units after this deployment. Now, across the table from him, we have Nikolai Ulf. Ulf? Yes. Corrects me on my pronunciation, and it is in fact pronounced Ulf. he is bringing minions, and in this particular case, he is bringing his Calaban list. This features a Wrestler, a Spitter, and a Blind Walker for their battle group. He brings a Sacrovault, a Mist Speaker, a Totem Hunter, and Victor Pendrake. All of those 3 solos being for free because of the Blindwater Congregation theme. He also has 2 maximum units, 2 units of Posse, one being Max and one being Min. And he also features a maximum unit of Croak Raiders for a total of an obscene amount of points. 128 points. Jeez. So we are now watching Sfera deploy his forces. And whilst we're doing that, I'm just going to make sure that the 4th stream camera is engaged and recording. I'll be right back.
So your Archeons are speed 9, that means they charge 30. Or they charge 12 and then 1 inch away. Let's start
Apologies, ladies and gentlemen, for the absence. I just had to make sure one of the other streaming recording tables was also functional. So, as Sfera is finishing his deployment right now, let's quickly just talk about the format that these gentlemen will be playing in. This event is a 3-man team event, and they're actually using the Heavy Metal Days pairing process and not the WTC style pairing process. Namely because the WTC style pairing process only really works properly in a 5-man team environment, being in many people's eyes too limited for the 3-man setup. So the preference has actually gone to the HMD pairing process, which if time permits, I'll be able to get a copy for you and we can go through that pairing process to see how it differs with the WTC style and how it's actually quite interesting for a 3-man event. So we are seeing an incredibly lopsided deployment over here. As the players are now finishing deployment, I'm going to take a closer look at the table right now for you so that I can mark out important warcasters and important solos, so we know exactly what their position is for later on in the game. 1 second.
Great target for game starts. 2 units of ideas. I will just choose the
right, so we have finished the deployment, and now let's just take a quick look at how the players have positioned their forces while Sverre does his advanced move for his halberdiers. On the minion side, we have right here in the bottom, we have Victor Pendrake, next to which is the battle engine. The battle engine is flanked by the blind walker here. The blind walker is escorted by a min unit of posse. Then we have the misspeaker right here in the middle. The totem hunter up in the flank, and totem hunter being escorted by the spitter right here. And then we have Calaban himself, I believe, is positioned right here next to this unit of max posse. On the retribution side, we have Keylyssa currently located right here in this pocket. We have a double line of halberdiers with the 2 units of Stormfall archers behind this line. And in terms of larger pieces, we have the Banshee over here, the battle engine over here, flanked by 2 mechanics, the Hydra, which is positioned right here, and the Fane Knight on the left flank. So, very interesting setup from Sverre right now. He's definitely going for the refused flank play. This is a very obvious and overt maneuver in that direction, but that doesn't mean that he can't project force into the bottom zone. Both the battle engine, the Hydra, even potentially the Banshee with Keylyssa will be able to project force, I would say, probably about there. If I were a Keylyssa player, I would put my Banshee and my Hydra somewhere along here, or potentially, if I was feeling frisky, over here, and then I would abuse that central obstructing building here. I would abuse that as much as possible to put high damage ranged fire into this minions list, and this minions list could potentially be quite vulnerable to the ranged firepower that Sverre is bringing. I mean, these Gator posse are not immortal, and the way that they are deployed, if they are to be hit by a slam gun, of which Sverre will have a total of 3 shots per turn, we are looking at potentially very serious damage. With posse being knocked down, having to take boosted POW 14s from these slam guns, it could potentially be very nasty. It will be largely up to the Croak Raiders to try and hold the line against these halberdiers, which is quite a task because the halberdiers have a fairly decent threat range. However, if we look at the list, we notice that Sverre has not brought a House Guard Thane, which means that extra 2 inches of threat is not an option. And because he's brought Keylyssa, he doesn't have any speed boosting mechanics for his halberdiers, meaning that they will have a static 11-inch melee threat. Now, Fort Croaks can actually deal with a static 11-inch melee threat as long as they position in such a way that they kill the 3 or 4 models that you put yourself in threat range of with their ranged firepower, and then leaving the rest of the unit barely outside 11 inches. That will be Nikolai's challenge, to navigate that and to make sure he doesn't get jammed, because we could be seeing a potentially top of 2 feet from Sverre here to really try and apply a hefty amount of pressure to definitely this top zone and potentially even the middle zone, backed up by a feat followed by a turn 3 to try and push these gators completely out of the top 2 zones. So I'm Very curious to see just how aggressive Sverre is going to be with his first turn, and how much he is going to just let that bottom zone slide. If he sends just the Feign Knight, I don't think he has enough beef to hold that bottom zone. I think the battle engine, the Sacro Vault, will, over the space of 2, maybe 3 turns, take care of the Feign Knight at range, and leaving this minimum unit of Gates of Posse in a perfect position to do exactly what their job is, and that is to take a flanking circular zone, preferably one that isn't heavily contested by your opponent, and to just try and chip away at that scenario leader. Because for the 10 points you are paying for them, a min unit of Posse in this particular theme is that's a fair chunk of boxes. It's a cheap scoring unit that is fairly survivable and also has fairly decent clearing capabilities. Those 3 Gatorman Posse will quite easily be able to clear most kind of casual contesting infantry models you usually send in there in the kind of turn 3, turn 4 situation. So I think we're just going to measure some Keylyssa gunshot ranges. She's going to try and get into that trench and probably nail a couple of Croak Raiders, but I don't think she has the range for it. It looks like she may just have to walk in a straight line directly towards the nearest Croak Raider, thus meaning that she can't take advantage of that trench. The question here being is, does she need the trench? Or is potentially the trench a trap? Now, obviously, Nikolai has one big scary gun in his Sacro Vault, absolutely. But other than that, and the Spitter, it doesn't have particularly much. I mean, yes, he has a unit of Croak Raiders, but if Keylyssa were to just cast a blur on herself, I would be fairly comfortable with just casually leaving her in the open at say 12 inches range from those Croak Raiders. If they want to try and take a really unlikely assassination, which I don't think they'll manage, but who knows? They can try it. And then in turn I will get a free unit of Croak Raiders for the peace trade. So I don't think most people would take that kind of bait. So we're just going to take a look here at Calaban's card to see what kind of counter game he may have into this Keylyssa list. So Calaban, being a 7 Fury caster, he has a Bone Shaker, Carnivore, Hex Blast, Occultation, Parasite. Now the Occultation will do decently against Keylyssa. Even though Keylyssa has a way around it, she will have to spend 2 to 4 focus a turn just to do so, and then only she will ignore that stealth with only 2 models, being namely the Banshee and the Hydra. So that could be a way for Nikolai to protect his important pieces. If he expects it to keep his caster safe from assassination, then he is in for a world of hurt, because it won't. The Banshee and the Hydra will just spend 2 turns taking maximum range shots with Phantom Hunter, and then eventually even the toughest casters will die under that ranged assault. But he can use it, for instance, on his Gatorman Posse, his max unit Gatorman Posse, or on the Croaks, to make them harder to deal with. And then if he applies it on a unit, then it becomes, I believe we may actually have it already up. Let me take a look. So, yeah, as we just discussed, we do in fact have occultation up on the Croak Raiders. We have Carnivore up on the max unit of Gatorman Posse in anticipation of the melee combat that they are going to be engaging in with the Halberdiers for this northernmost circular zone. So we have the Keylyssa activation going here now, and just the one Croak. Yeah, so he's just going to snipe the one Croak. He's going to camp 3 focus. He's going to pop his feet. And then I assume we are probably going to see some fairly aggressive positioning from these halberdiers. Them now living in the safety of not being charged and being stealth. And that being said, they still have to take into consideration that the Croak Hunters will most likely be in range to walk and shoot at the halberdiers within their 5-inch range, meaning that they may potentially have to shield wall here. So he's just parking himself outside 7 inches of the Gatorman Posse, and I think he's going to just largely ignore the Croak Hunters. And he is going to position in such a way as to trade with the Croak Hunters, but with the intention of probably killing that maximum Gator Posse. I wouldn't feel entirely satisfied trading all my halberdiers just for the Croak Raiders. I would also want to do some serious damage to that Gator Posse. I would want to kill at least 3 of them in my following turn, preferably the entire unit. If I was able to get in potentially a couple of supporting gunshots from either the Battle Engine, the Banshee, or the Hydra, and potentially also some Stormfall archer shots, then I could potentially see myself focus firing and trying to cut a deep wedge into the minion army like so. Tying up the Spitter, rendering it largely useless just by tying it up over several rounds with halberdiers. Although Sverre has to be very careful here that he doesn't underestimate the Totem Hunter. He has to take into account that Totem Hunters are not easy to kill, and that they can fairly reliably do very good damage and are still at the same time a very maneuverable piece that is very useful for contesting scenario. Okay, so here we have a run from the Banshee to contest the top zone and take position in the trench. Once again, question being what is the use of the trench? In this particular case, though, I think it might be beneficial for Sverre's Warjacks to have this trench bonus because of Parasite that Calaban has. Having a defensive buff to make that Parasite harder to hit, and potentially even getting you the opportunity of having that Parasite actually miss your Warjack, that could potentially be a game-changing maneuver. And that could put Calaban in a very tough decision where he has to decide, okay, do I want to recast Parasite onto this Banshee to make sure that I kill it with my unit? And yesterday we saw a situation where that very nearly got Jonas's Denegra 1 killed when he missed a very easy Parasite. and decided to recast it. And were it not for his opponent forgetting a small order of activation issue, he would have been assassinated as a consequence. So here we go. Let's take a look at the targets for the AFG. So it looks like we're just going to go ahead and drift some AoEs into some Croaks and maybe even some War Beasts. So, yeah, they're just getting ready to place these difficult terrains. And we're going to see where they end up and how much damage these drifted blasts can do. Needing 8. That's the... yeah, that's a big difference between needing 8s and needing 6s for the battle engine. When it aims, obviously, it gets the +2 to the damage rolls. Now, that +2 to the damage rolls is only applied after the power of its weapon is half for the blast damage, meaning that you're actually rolling around with a pound 9 blast damage when aiming. And I think many people have noticed, I myself included, that that really makes a big difference when you're trying to drift some AoEs into large clumps of infantry, making your kill percentages much higher. Obviously, the swing from the A+ to 6+ being the largest statistical swing you can get when modifying a dice roll by 2. So it's really that in many situations really results in a huge increase in damage. This also being one of the reasons why some Keylyssa players like to go for refuge on the battle engine. The ability to maintain your limited mobility but still have that aiming bonus for the damage output is actually very powerful. Not only that, but refuge gives you the opportunity to move, shoot and move, giving the AFG a surprising amount of mobility and allowing you to do things like walk here, shoot an enemy target, and then walk further to contest either this or that zone. Now obviously with the range it probably won't make it, and the way it's positioned right now, that AFG won't make it into this bottom zone. But it is a maneuver that you have to have in your playbook as a Keylyssa player, that every once in a while you have to pull out when the situation is right, and your opponent will usually not expect it. This obviously being a part of the Keylyssa paradox. This being the question of how does one play Keylyssa, and that is largely determined by where you apply your refuge. Now many people, there are many good refuge targets in most Keylyssa armies. I personally myself have always played it as leaving it on her all of the time for the entire game, thus solving the paradox of not knowing which juicy model to choose to put sentry on, refuge on in that particular turn. So Sverre has just finished his turn and he has utterly abandoned the left flank. His left flank is completely abandoned. There is no intention of even remotely going in that direction, apparently. And he has decided to concentrate all of his firepower and all of his muscle in this short front line here. Now, this entire block of halberdiers is largely safe because of Keylyssa's feet. However, Calaban does have a feat, and his feat is pretty good at killing large numbers of dudes. Let's take a look. So, Calaban's feat is called Death Harvest, and it reads as follows. Each time a friendly faction model destroys an enemy model while in Calaban's control range, Calaban gains 1 Fury point. Immediately after resolving an attack in which a friendly faction model in Calaban's control range destroyed 1 or more enemy models, Calaban can cast 1 spell. Calaban can boost and damage rolls on spells cast as a result of Death Harvest. So, this potentially, if you have an entire table full of dudes, can result in Calaban just living the dream and getting 20 Fury in a turn. And being able to spend all of that Fury in said turn by doing things like arcing Hex Blasts or Bone Shakers. Now, Bone Shakers will do fairly well against these halberdiers. They are not in shield guard order. As long as he can get his arc node within the 5 inches because of the stealth, he could potentially Bone Shaker 5, maybe 6, maybe 7 halberdiers, and then those halberdiers will go and kill 4, 5, maybe even 6 or 7 other halberdiers. So, based on how many models he is able to trigger into Calaban's feat, we may potentially be seeing a feat turn here. So Nikolai is just talking through his thinking with his opponent, and we're going to be seeing now what happens. So Nikolai definitely feeling the pressure here from Sfera's aggressive positioning and early feat. This bottom of 1 feet, it can be your savior, or it can be a largely wasted feat. So your opponent can choose to back up and play it slow, in which case, in many cases, you have essentially wasted your feat. But there are many other situations where a Keylyssa player does not feat on the bottom of 1, and against a particularly aggressive opponent, they can take crippling casualties as a consequence on the top of 2. And then you're always kicking yourself as the Keylyssa player, and you'll just say, I wish I had feated. As a long-time Keylyssa player, I can tell you that is one of the worst feelings, the creeping suspicion that you should have feated last turn, or the knowledge that you were planning on feating it but forgot to do so. I think for Keylyssa especially, it can be crippling. So I think largely to protect his fairly vulnerable halberdiers, I think the bottom of 1 feet is warranted in this case, partly because the minions list actually has some viable threat ranges, especially against these halberdiers. So I mean, with a blind walker, we're looking at a 5-inch walk alongside a 8-inch range on the Bone Shaker, making it a 13-inch threat from the blind walker, and that is a fairly significant bubble. So over here, I think we're just proxying the blind walker positioning right here. Yeah, so they're just measuring, because the blind walker obviously doesn't have Pathfinder, so they were just measuring out just how far he could walk through that difficult terrain template that was put down by the battle engine, and then seeing how many potential targets there are for any kind of arced spells. Now, with this stealth from Keylyssa's feat, I do not imagine that it's any more than this. Potentially, maybe this one might be within the 5 inches, but I think that would be very generous. I would not count on getting more than 3 viable bone shaker targets here. But that makes it more difficult, because if Nikolai wants to bone shaker these targets here to turn around and kill these halberdiers over here, that is all well and good, but it means that his feet trigger targets must be from this section of the board, which means he has to bring his croak raiders all the way around here and engage him at point blank range with some gunfire. So we are seeing Calaban's activation now. We are seeing the feet, and we are seeing the positioning here. Let's just take a look at the top view. So let's just mark him for our sake. So we have Calaban positioned right there, and we're going to be seeing some arc spells here. Yeah, so we're seeing the first bone shaker go off. So we're looking at potentially killing, I think, these 2 halberdiers with the bone shaker. Okay, so he used the bone shaker to take a swing at the officer, doing 1 box of damage. A little bit unfortunate, because if he'd rolled slightly better, he could have prevented that unit from ever using their mini feat, which is a big deal. It's a large part of what gives halberdiers damage potential, especially in a non-Alara 2 list. So we're seeing another bone shaker here. He's just going to measure out the move and attack range of the halberdier that he's used. I believe we're looking at this one over here. That's right. So the question is he going to take another swing at the unit leader? No, he's not. He's just going to try and remove one of the frontline models. There we go. So another halberdier bites the dust there. Calaban is now camping 2 Fury. That seems like a wise choice. Always have to be careful that you don't just get shot to pieces, because this right here looks like Calaban might be in threat range there with a shot from the Hydra. So he has to be very careful. So that's why you want to always make sure you camp 2 Fury. So we're looking now at wanting to kill as many halberdiers to fuel Calaban, which can then be spent to kill more dudes. So what we're looking at is needing to kill 2 halberdiers for every bone shaker that Calaban wants to arc. Now, keeping in mind that the only viable arc targets for bone shakers are these models over here, which means that we don't want those models getting killed. So Nikolai has to be very careful about picking the right halberdiers to kill here, keeping in mind that he has to stay within control range of his caster. So the models that will fuel Calaban's feet will only be enemy models in his feet range. So I assume that probably maybe only these 3 models are actually currently still in Calaban's feet. So he may just be using Calaban's feet defensively here by just killing those models and then going up to 5 Fury. So we see the first. Okay, so he is going to go ahead and use the first kill there. And he's going to immediately cast a spell, I believe. No, he's not. There we go. So we're going to see the Croak Raiders continue to pour fire onto these halberdiers, killing another one. So I believe we have 6 halberdiers killed so far. So we have one more viable arc target left here. That means that this is also a viable arc target. Yeah, so we have a Bone Shaker going off on this model here to try and flank around and kill that, which does indeed happen. Taking the Halberdier, kill count to 8 so far. It's a fairly good feat turn from Calaban. But not the dream of 20 Fury. Probably Nikolai believes that he would not be allowed to live that dream, and if he does not do significant damage to these halberdiers this turn, they will do so much damage next turn that he will be crippled and will not be able to play the long-term attrition game. So now we're seeing the Spitter activate, most likely just gonna drift a shot somewhere. So we're just gonna take a look, see if we can get a nice little drift going here. Let's take a look. Oh, that's an unfortunate direction, and he also, but not too bad. He rolled good on the distance and gets 3 halberdiers. Choosing to boost against the first one. Fails to kill him. And is just choosing to try and hard roll the other 2. Getting 1 kill. And putting the corrosion on the other 2. So fairly average drifted shot from the Spitter there. It's usually roughly the way that it goes. It'll kill 1 dude and put corrosion on 1 or 2 others. So it's a fairly reliable 2-kill a turn model. So here we see the Totem Hunter. Totem Hunter being a very mobile piece with the jump ability, being incredibly hard to tie down, and with his reach and high defense can be put into a position where he threatens a lot of nasty free strikes. A Totem Hunter is not a model you want to be taking a free strike from, but it's also not a model that you want to be wasting too many activations on taking care of. And when positioned the way that he is right now in the middle of quite a compact cluster of infantry, we're looking right here. If we take a look at the top view, if he puts his Croak Hunter in that position there, he is essentially boxing in these 6 halberdiers right here. He's preventing the halberdiers from charging past him into the more vulnerable things behind. He's preventing himself from getting flank rolled over here. And he's also preventing these models from just escaping. Meaning that he has more time for his Croak Raiders and for his Gatorman posse to make their way up the field and into this scenario zone so they can really start fighting where it matters. The positioning of this Gator posse will be very important for the next turn, because he has to commit them at least to some degree. Not necessarily to contest, but because of their low speed, he has to position them now so that they'll be able to do damage next turn. he's not going to be able to do any damage with them this turn, but he has to position them so that the movement options that they have next turn are such that he can get some juicy targets going. So we see another halberdier going off the table here due to the totem hunter having leapt and repositioned over here, having killed a dude and then leapt and then all that kind of stuff. He has everything. No matter how many special rules you think a totem hunter should have, he has one more special rule. So on this particular view, it's quite hard to see, but the totem hunter is positioned right here. So he's literally right in Sverre's face, and he's positioned very annoyingly, and he is going to tie something up. He's going to force some model or unit here to have to essentially waste their activation in dealing with this totem hunter. It may potentially even be the Banshee itself that has to deal with this totem hunter, which means that there is one Banshee shot that is not going into Nikolai's caster. And against Keylyssa, that is always a good thing. So we just measured a quick threat range there. I believe Nikolai may have just discovered that he may in fact be within the Hydra's threat range, which means that he has to be considerate in terms of his focus camping. Obviously, the feat is still active, so if Nikolai were to kill any more models, such as I believe this one over here, being in feet, he might be able to cast another spell. So I think he may be saving that as a kind of end of turn feat target. So I'm just going to go take a look at what this model here is. So that model down there is in fact Victor Pendrake, meaning that this model here, I believe, is the only model still left in Calaban's control range, and may potentially be a target for a potential Bone Shaker, or to serve as a trigger for this battle engine. This battle engine just may just go up, and he's choosing not to do anything with the battle engine. Okay. Yeah. So as we predicted here, this min unit of Gator Posse is just going to take this free zone and luxuriate a little bit in this completely empty bottom half of the map. It's really quite surprising that that Sverre has chosen to neglect this side of the map so definitively and so early. I'll be very curious about what his reasoning was behind that maneuver. Not even sending in the Fane Knight, for instance, or the Hydra to, be positioned in such a way to position themselves maybe here. I think 3 individual Gator Posse members are going to have a hard time dealing with the Hydra, and yes, the Hydra will get stuck, but eventually over several turns it'll be able to punch its way out of there. It seems kind of a missed opportunity on the scenario front. So I think Sverre may have the impression that he has a disadvantage in the long game, and that he may feel that he needs a very strong definitive push on one side in order to tip the scenario balance. So, which is a potentially viable strategy in this game. In scenarios such as this, with the symmetrical deployment and then the scoring flanking zones, what very often happens is that the 2 armies will initially meet in this kind of formation, and then one flank will push hard, and then the armies will have a tendency to kind of rotate around each other. Now, what we may be seeing here is a continuation of that trend, whereby we see a very hard push coming into this top zone from the Retribution, and an exploitation of the weak flank by the minions to flank around here. And then we might be getting into a situation where the battle lines start looking like this. And then we might see a point where the battle lines start looking like this. And that will be the very late game, where everything will start revolving around this central zone. And once we start getting to a point where the central zones have to be controlled by warcasters, I think Nikolai may have the advantage here in being able to hide behind this building with his caster, assuming that he can take care of these enemy warjacks that can, of course, ignore the building when it comes to shooting. Assuming that Keylyssa, of course, is willing to spend 4 focus every turn to make that happen, or potentially 6 focus every turn to give herself Phantom Hunter as well. So, for all you watching out there on Twitch, I just posted something in the chat. If you could just let me know in the chat right now how your audio and video quality is, and whether or not you have any suggestions. I would love to hear them. In the meantime, we are now going to take a look as Sverre is thinking his turn out. We're going to go take a look at the clocks, and as you can see all the way up here in the top, we are looking at a 31-minute clock on Nikolai's side, having just finished his turn, against a 40-minute clock on Sverre's side. Now, Sverre is going into his turn 2 now, which means at the end of this turn, scoring will start, which means that he has to take into account the fact that this is a long way. So he may be going into a scenario scoring disadvantage on his own bottom of 2. So we're rolling dice, and he rolls 2 5s, which is very good, especially when we think about why he's rolling those dice. Now, what we see here, that was a slam shot. Okay, so we're probably seeing an aiming Banshee. Yeah, so it looks like that was the Banshee just relaxed, aimed, and apparently did not boost its damage, because he still has a focus on his Banshee, I believe. So he's choosing with his ranged elements not to advance, instead going for the aiming bonus. Now, these minion models don't have the world's best defensive stats when it comes to defense. I might be tempted to actually want to push a little bit more to apply some pressure, because just pushing with halberdiers alone is not going to do it. I mean, I believe 12 of them are already dead. So this could potentially be a very bad, not very bad, but a potentially costly strategy. He is potentially giving up a lot of table space in order to get a +2 to hit. Now, with the battle engine, obviously that's different, because he wants the damage. And this is why we said, this is why I mentioned earlier, this is why in this particular matchup, the refuge on the battle engine may be critical to keep it relevant to the game. It sometimes runs the risk of being left behind because it wants to aim so badly. It really wants to aim every single turn to get that extra damage and to get that extra accuracy. So we're looking at a blasted earth shot, and he manages to kill 1 Croak Raider. I believe.
You can really catch
All 3 Croak Raiders. Okay, you see, there we go, ladies and gentlemen. We see it right there. That is the difference between an aiming AFG and an AFG that is merely walking. So what we now see is that the AFG has dropped 2 blasted earth shots, one on this blind walker right here and one on these Croak Raiders right here, killing 3 Croak Raiders, doing some damage to the blind walker, but most importantly trapping it in difficult terrain. Now the blind walker doesn't have Pathfinder, and it's only speed 5, and the only way it can arc is if it walks. Which means that this arc node is moving 2.5 inches a turn, which is awful for Calaban. It means that he has no way of threatening any kind of spells deep into Sphera's army, so he is now committed to just grinding it out. However, I believe he has the muscle and the boxes to do so.
If he was further back, then probably would have got 2 heavies on the plus. That was if he didn't make the shot,
So there goes the Totem Hunter.
probably wouldn't have killed it, but he would have kept it busy.
I'm not sure who killed the Totem Hunter right now.
He could have done it, he would have jammed in, because one of them is face and say heal with you.
It may... No, it doesn't look like it. That's very strange. Oh, I believe it may have been the Feign Knights.
I probably would have put a 4-inch apart, but you could have slammed it in. Because I see him from, oh, that guy can slam.
So let's take a look here at Nikolai's defensive setup. So we have some blocking Croak Hunters. And then we have contesting this top zone, we have a Spitter and I believe only 1 posse member. The other 4 posse members seemingly not having made it into the zone, which means that we are only looking to get 4 kills to clear this top zone for Sveta. The Spitter obviously being very hard to remove, being very far away. It looks like it is, well, I can tell you for a fact that it's out of threat range of the Banshee because they're standing on opposite sides of the zones, putting them roughly 11 inches apart. Because both of them are not really towing in, but more putting a foot in the zone. But that is still outside of the Banshee's threat range of 10 inches. So the chances of removing the Spitter are fairly low. He's going to have to commit a lot of halberdiers to getting the job done. And it looks like we may be seeing a mini feat and massive charge into this Spitter. However, there are not a lot of halberdiers left. He's really taken a lot of casualties despite his feat. So the question is whether or not the positioning that he did with that front row of halberdiers may potentially even have been too aggressive for the second turn. So we're going to have to see now if these halberdiers can actually make their money's worth and do some good damage. They're not going to be able to get the alpha on the Gatorman posse, which is ideally what they would want. Ideally they would want to save their mini feat for a full-on 10 versus 5 halberdiers versus Gatorman posse engagement, because that's something that could really work in their favor and they can get a lot of work done. And they can utilize all those attacks with power 14. So right now we are just measuring the threat range from the Banshee. Oh no, I believe we are measuring a charge lane for this halberdier that was standing next to the Banshee, and he can indeed charge past that Croak Raider without taking a free strike. 2 halberdiers going into this Croak Raider right here, 2 halberdiers going into this Croak right here, and then a total of 5 halberdiers going into the spitter. So we're going to be seeing those attacks now, and if he keeps rolling like that, he'll be fine. That was a bit lackluster. It does about 5 boxes on the first charge. Then we're looking at about 8 boxes for the second charge.
I just met him yesterday.
That's a very good roll for the third charge. And looks like the spitter may be going down here. It's got 8 boxes left, and it looks like this might do it. Ooh, 1 box left. Leaves the spitter on 1, but doesn't finish the job. We may be looking at a Stormfall Archer that has to step in and save the day with a snipe shot here. He's going to take a free strike. He's going to take a 1 dice free strike, which will hit and kill that halberdier, but that is just fine in the situation. You do not want that spitter to be engaged in melee. So he's just going to reposition and pull back. But I believe he has now forgotten his attacks on the Croak Raiders. And moving on to the activation for the Stormfall Archers now. They're going to try and snipe the spitter. And they're also going to try and get a few maybe brutal shots on these Gatorman posse.
In our gaming group, slamming last 2 people is power 12.
So the 5 hits, and we're looking at a brutal damage, power 12. That should do it. So he has indeed killed the spitter, but I believe he has forgotten 4 attacks from these halberdiers to kill these Croak Raiders. Either he's forgotten them or he has chosen on purpose not to take them, which I would not understand. So we're seeing some brutal shots now going into the Gator Posse. This Max Gator Posse, who actually loses 1 member and fails the tough roll. Stormfall Archers actually having some perfect target of opportunity in these Gatorman posse right here.
Because of the failed needle
Gatorman posse being really the ideal targets for repeated brutal damage shots. And not only that, but because of the Defenders of Ios bonus, we're actually going to be seeing reposition on those Stormfall Archers afterwards. And that is actually incredibly powerful. I have actually played this theme myself at WTC this year with also double Stormfall Archers in the background. And they are extremely useful on the flanks. And with their reposition, they are able to park themselves 15 inches away from any threat, which means that they become a very hard to deal with threat that is continuously a pain in your opponent's side. And as such, they can quite often survive into the late game, where they can start becoming scoring units, become scenario relative, but also continuously contribute towards the fight going on more towards the middle of the map, and helping take out high value and high armor targets. So we have a bit of a weird situation right now going on for Sverre. He has gone in very aggressively with the refused flank. He has completely given up the bottom half of the table in order to enable that maneuver. Now, that maneuver being cost-effective completely hinges on his ability to push through this top zone with overwhelming force and to then threaten into this zone in order to maintain a reliable bunker over here to control these top 2 zones, and then just accepting the fact that he's losing that bottom zone. But in order to compensate for the continuous control point drain he's going to be experiencing from this zone here being held by this min unit of Gatorman posse, he has to not only score this zone every turn, he also has to prevent his opponent from being able to walk into it. So there we go. We see the Banshee activating now. The the Totem Hunter probably being killed by the Fey Knight. So we're taking a shot probably on this Gator Posse member right here. And he fluffs his damage roll massively, doing essentially nothing. But the Banshee is now in a good position to contest these two zones. And she's going to be fairly hard to remove from there, and also she's going to threaten the Blindwalker. Blindwalker doesn't really have the punch to be able to deal with this Banshee, and he will get it killed. He will get his Blindwalker killed if he doesn't move, and he's not going to be able to move very far because of this difficult terrain. So that Blindwalker is in a heap of trouble. He may potentially get one more round of some decent arcs going, but other than that, I see this Blindwalker getting engaged next turn and potentially being killed. So we're going to have to see what Nikolai does here to counter this aggressive push. Now he has boxes left on the table, but he does not have much damage output left on the table, especially dealing with a heavy Warjack, which has a high number of boxes concentrated in a very small portion of the table. Sometimes it can be hard to bring enough damage potential to bear. Now the battle engine is going to do some good work, the Sacral Vault. The problem is every turn that the Sacral Vault is spending on not killing halberdiers with his Death Field ability, it seems to me a little bit like a turn wasted. Obviously Nikolai had no idea where these halberdiers were going to deploy because he deployed first, but I think it may have been warranted to do a very aggressive run to not just push forward and then go sideways, but to just immediately go straight to the other side of the map. Sometimes this is a play that actually works out very well, is spending your first turn just moving laterally in order to face your counter units against the unit that they want to be countering. Especially when going first, you can end up in a situation where your opponent will counter deploy to put, for instance, his huge blocks of squishy infantry as far away from your infantry mulching Sacral Vault as possible. That is the advantage of going second and being able to counter deploy. So you may have to give up the advantage of going first in order to get your units to their maximum efficiency. And you may potentially have to give up a little bit of table space, but you already have a large advantage in table space, so that can be compensated for. So we're seeing the Fey Knight go in now on the, I believe it is the battle engine. No, he's going in on the Blindwalker, doing a fair bit of damage with the Weapon Master charging attack, and he's going to reposition. Now let's see where this reposition is going to take him. The Fey Knight is surprisingly annoying to deal with, and can often reposition himself in the mid game into very tricky positions whereby he can wedge himself into little spaces. He really enjoys being around huge bases and using both friendly and enemy huge bases to screen himself, and then just tucking himself somewhere where he's contesting on scenario. He's incredibly hard to reach, and he's able to just swing away every turn with that Weapon Master attack. So potentially what we may be seeing is an activation from this Gatorman posse to try and clear this threat, in which case he would not be scoring this bottom zone. So that's a little bit of a dilemma there for Nikolai. Oh, and then we're seeing a nice big juicy damage roll on the Blind Walker, which is getting shot.
Maybe the opponents around me just didn't know
Which was getting shot by someone. I think it was Keylyssa who just opened up and then refuged away. Yeah, it looks like it was Keylyssa.
They got nerfed, but now with the Ghost, they got back up.
So now Sverre is realizing that he actually has no models on the left-hand side of the table, and is potentially considering maybe sacrificing a mechanic here. No, he's gonna keep the mechanics, and he's going to at least position one mechanic to be able to run to contest next turn. That's a very smart choice. Often in the late game, as you start losing battle group models, it becomes the job of the mechanic to run 12 inches into a zone to contest for one turn before being mercilessly killed. But you can't do this with too many mechanics. You can only really afford to do this with one mechanic, because you need always at least one mechanic back home for when you do get engaged and for when you need that that +2 damage boost from the Empower. So Sverre has finished his turn now on 21 minutes left on his clock. He has finished his turn 3, and we're now going into turn 4 for Nikolai. Now, as far as I'm aware, there hasn't been... oh no, Nikolai has just scored the bottom zone. So he should now... Nikolai should now be up on scenario 2-0. Let me check the score.
There will come a third suffix now, I'm sure.
So we are indeed looking at a 1-0 CP lead in Nikolai's favor. And so as he's going into his turn now, he is starting to become aware that there are also some heavy warjacks and heavier targets in his opponent's army. He's been having to deal with these halberdiers initially, which are fairly squishy and easy to kill. But now he's going up against some tougher targets, which means that he is going to have to get in there, and it's going to be very important on how he decides to play his Wrestler, because he's going to need his Wrestler not only to get through the Banshee, but also to get through the Hydra and also to get through the battle engine. Realistically, the Wrestler is probably the only model that's capable of really dealing with the AFG, because it can't be charged, which makes the posse fairly useless against it, and it has carapace, which means that the battle engine, the Sacrovault, the minion battle engine, is not going to be able to do jack shit to this AFG in terms of damage. I mean, we're looking at armor 22 against range fire. That is, and that's without armor buffs or any kind of feats or anything. That's just bare bones armor against shooting, and that's a lot. Really is a lot, and I think it may be too much for Nikolai's army to be able to deal with right now, especially considering the fact that, just to add insult to injury, not to forget, there are still 8 Stormfall archers sitting right here, and those guys will do a crap ton of damage to this minion army. This minion army doesn't have high defense. Okay, yes, it has a lot of boxes, but it doesn't have super high armor either, which means that those 8 shots, those 8 brutal damage POW 12s coming in every turn are going to do huge amounts of damage. In this list, this Defenders of Isles list, it's all about, when you do play the double Stormfall variant, it's all about actually buying your Stormfall archers the opportunity and the time they need to do their work, because they need to do their work over 3 turns. If you can get 3 turns of shooting out of Stormfall archers, whereby they get to shoot and scoot away and be safe from retaliation and do it again next turn, you've won the attrition game. And what makes this list really strong is the fact that you have an AFG and a Banshee that can engineer knockdown shots to allow your Stormfall archers to hit automatically. The only weakness Stormfall Archers have is that they have Rat 5, and if you're shooting at a knockdown target, you don't care about Rat 5. And all of a sudden, their damage potential just goes absolutely through the roof. But they need to be supported, and they need to be screened by halberdiers, which Sverre has done very well, and they need to be supported by enabling pieces like the 3 knockdown shots a turn coming out of the Banshee and the AFG, and the 3 stationary shots coming out of Keylyssa every turn when you're playing into enemy warjacks. People often forget that. Stationary shots plus Stormfall Archers, which then get to reposition, is a brutal combo, and it allows you to take your opponent's models for no sacrifice of your own. You're not exposing yourself in any way. Your Keylyssa is just going to go up, it's going to stationary through warjacks, and it's going to refuge back to safety. The Stormfall Archers are just going to go in, drop their brutal power 12s, and then just retreat back to 15 inches. And then those warjacks are going to be left on stationary, so they're not even going to be able to do anything in response. And even if they are, they still have to spend their focus to do so, and they have to invest in all kinds of tech to try and counter that. For what? For a couple of Stormfall Archers in retaliation. So it's a very potent list in attrition, and as a result, they can quite often get at the very least, they can hold on scenario, if not apply so much pressure that they win on scenario, especially with that advanced move and the quickness of the halberdiers. So Nikolai really in the tank here, but it seems like he's decided on a course of action and is going to go ahead and start activating now. So I think we're going to see an initial. We're gonna be seeing a proxying here to see Calaban's control range, and potentially even some arcing distances. So this right here is I believe the Mist speaker. They just correctly managed to measure outside 5 inches of the Banshee before nudging the model. So it's okay. We know that he is in fact able to cast a spell. I believe we're going to be seeing a Bone Shaker go up against this halberdier up there. Needing a 6, so needing a 7 to hit. He misses. Oh no, what's this? Yeah. So I believe what we just saw was a failed Bone Shaker attempt from the Misspeaker, which I believe did not make it into the central rectangular zone. And now we're going to be checking how many, what we're going to do with this posse. So there is only one posse member remaining from this max unit, and he is going to have to put in a serious amount of work, and he is going to need the luck of the gods over the next turn to survive this this halberdier retaliation, because it looks like he might be taking a few charges next turn. So this guy is still having Carnival, meaning that he gains a +2 to his melee attack rolls against living models. And when one of these Gatorman posse members kills one living model, then Calaban is able to heal D3, which is a fairly nifty ability for the late game for the heals, but is a very useful ability at all times for the +2 to hit. With the limited volume of attacks that Nikolai has, getting the extra certainty from the +2 to hit is hugely beneficial in making a reliable battle plan and being able to implement that. So the wrestler is about to go in now, and we have a terrible view here because we're being blocked by the Sacral Vault, so I'm going to leave it on this view right now so we can see the positioning. I'm not sure what's going on. I think we might be about to see a throw. That is the only logical reason why I would put a wrestler in that position. It would be to throw my Blind Walker. But I believe Blind Walkers can't become Arknodes after they've been thrown, if I'm not mistaken. Or maybe he's just moving back there to keep the wrestler safe from getting bansheed. And just keeping it there conservatively and trying to ride it out and retaliate next turn. Okay, so we have Calaban moving down to the bottom. So what we may be seeing is a switching maneuver whereby Calaban will go into the bottom zone to score and probably remain somewhere in this forest to keep himself safe. And the Gatorman posse will be used to reinforce this middle part of the board here to take out the Fey Knight and then potentially engage this Hydra either around the south side of the building or through here via the north. Oh, so we have a throw going down from the Blind Walker against the Fey Knight, and the Blind Walker has in fact won the strength roll off, and the Fey Knight is about to get thrown. So he now is rolling his melee attack roll against a halberdier, I believe, not the Banshee. Yeah. So the trajectory of the throne model, the target of the throne model is this halberdier right here, and so they're looking right now what the trajectory of that model is going to be. It's going to get thrown in a straight line directly towards that halberdier, and it will make a tunnel whereby the large base will move along this tunnel until it contacts this Banshee's base, whereby the throw is interrupted. This is not a bad scenario, however, because it means that the Fey Knight is taking a additional die on damage because it's colliding with an equal and larger base, and it also means that both the Fey Knight and the Banshee are going to be getting knocked down, which goes a long way towards mitigating their damage output next turn. For all intents and purposes, being knocked down costing you 1 focus, and a Banshee having 3 focus and a Banshee having 2 focus is a big difference. So we're just having a judge call here.
I don't think they're enough. The judge is coming. Better be. Could go even louder.
And we're just gonna take a look to see what this judge call is.
It's a media tagline, so it also independently from something that's not engaged. I'm throwing him at him, but he's melee with them. It doesn't matter because it's a melee attack actually.
So they were
You do a melee attack with the model you throw. They're not throwing a range.
just going into the finer details of the throw rules and whether or not the targeted throw that you do is in fact a melee attack, and it does in fact count as a melee attack. So, oh, there we go. There is the additional die damage roll on the Fey Knight, and it dismounts him. This is fantastic right now for Nikolai. The Banshee taking no damage, but that that is not a huge problem. He should be fairly happy with this throw. He's managed to significantly limit the damage output and maneuverability of the Fey Knight. He has made sure that the Banshee is knocked down as well. And we may have to ask a judge to see if the dismounted Fey Knight is also knocked down. If you're in the chat and you know about this one, I'd definitely like to hear what you guys think about that. Rexum correctly informing me that in fact you cannot throw your own models anymore. That's completely right. I had actually completely forgotten that when I was looking at this wrestler activation. It just the positioning kind of threw me off guard a little bit, but it turns out he was just playing it safe and avoiding the difficult terrain and getting ready for the peace trade that is going to follow over the next 2 turns. So I think we have the battle engine. It's going now to try and clear some more infantry. We are going to be seeing a probably boosted shot. Ooh, he gets the boosted shot on the halberdier but misses. Sorry, on the Fey Knight, on the dismounted Fey Knight, and he misses. I think that makes 2 missed shots for the battle engine on the same Fey Knight. And we have a 3rd shot coming up now, not being boosted, but making it and getting the damage roll. So we're going to be buying a boosted shot here with a quadruple ones. Quadruple one on this Banshee. That is an awful dice roll, and that is something that Nikolai is going to regret. Because at this point in the game, getting that incidental 5 to 8 chip points of damage in on the enemy heavy warjacks before they go into melee can actually make a big difference, especially if you get lucky and you manage to take out an important arm or even a cortex. So we're going to take a look at the bottom view to see how he decides to play this min unit of posse, and he's just going to play it safe. He is just going to say, you know what, this 10-point unit is just going to score all day long and win me the game on scenario. And all I have to do is follow the Chris Davies 3-step plan of winning War Machine, which is step 1, don't die. Step 2, don't lose, and step 3, win. So he's taken care of step 1 by putting his caster in a very conservative position, far away from the enemy threat ranges, although this may potentially not be far away enough, because I think there may be a potential for this Banshee and this Hydra to come walking forward, and this Keylyssa potentially to come walking forward and putting Phantom Hunter shots right into this caster. He is, however, camping 3, which is the ideal amount for this situation, being able to transfer pretty much all of those damage shots. And not only that, but he is hiding behind a large base to make sure that no one can draw line of sight to him or get any charge lanes. So that step 1 is going very well. I do not expect Calaban to be assassinated this coming turn. Now, in terms of not losing, he's doing fairly well, because he is still contesting this zone. Chances are those 2 models will probably die this turn, but he has a significant force and is able and willing to slug it out for this rectangular zone for the next couple of turns. He has the Blind Walker, which is on good health. We have the Wrestler, which has been untouched so far. And we have a battle engine shots going in now. So we're going to be seeing a shot on the Wrestler first. So that one gets shield guarded to the Blind Walker. The Blind Walker is going to be taking a 0 damage knockdown shot. The second shot is probably going to go into the original target, the Wrestler, trying to generate a knockdown and doing some good damage. Doing some good damage with that boosted power 16. Oh, sorry, not boosted, just regular power 16 with the knockdown. That is going to help limit Nikolai's mobility next turn for his War Beasts. Having to spend that Fury to shake is going to limit his options. It'll also limit their damage output. A Wrestler with one less Fury is a lot less scary. Many times it's that one last attack that is the difference between being able to one-round an enemy heavy Warjack and leaving it with just a few boxes left alive. Especially if the dice go against you, and in this stage of the game you do not want a couple of bad dice rolls to lose you the game. You want to be able to do things despite bad dice rolls. You want to have a high certainty, high reliability attacks. So we have Keylyssa going now. She's going to just stand still, aim, and take a boosted shot into the Blind Walker, I believe. Rolling the hard 11. Just casually doing some damage. And I think we're seeing a tough roll. Oh, it was Victor Pendrake. So Keylyssa just sniped out Victor Pendrake with relative ease. And then we're going to also be seeing a few boxes of damage on, I believe, this solo right here. The Misspeaker. I believe that is the Misspeaker. That just took 2 boxes. And then she's just going to refuge to safety. I'm just going to take a look to show you exactly where Keylyssa is on the table right now.
Refuge.
Yeah. So Keylyssa has in fact refuged her way to safety all the way over here. So Sverre also being very conservative with his Warcaster, playing it safe and utilizing his caster to score that top zone. This will enable the Halberdiers to not be confined to that north zone and to be able to help in the Banshee and the Hydra's push to clear the central zone. What we're probably going to be seeing is maybe another round of shooting from the Hydra. Although I would want to see it at least advance up so that it can join in the melee engagement in the next turn when it comes to taking out the battle engine, because I believe that can best be taken out in melee. So now that the AFG, just as we talked about earlier, here we're seeing the synergy between the AFG and the Stormfall Archers. Because these Stormfall Archers are just going to walk in and auto-hit all of their brutal shots on this Wrestler and this Blind Walker. And we're going to be seeing a fair bit of damage coming in now. I suspect the Wrestler is being targeted first. And he has so far, it looks like he's taken approximately 8 boxes of damage. He takes another 4 boxes, so he's taken about 12 damage so far. And then the Stormfall Archers are just going to pull back. And so now we're going to see the attempt on Sverre's side to clear this top zone. He has to deal with 1 Gatorman Posse and 1 Croak Raider. I'm not sure that Croak Raider is still occultated. I don't think so. So we have 3 Halberdiers going in on the posse, with I believe 1 more Halberdier just standing still to try and solo duel the Croak Hunter. So we're looking at 3 boxes from a swing. And looks like the Croak Raider is about to go down. Yep. So we have one Croak Raider being cleared. Let me take a look at who that is. And that was actually the single remaining model from the second Halberdier unit. Or should I say the first Halberdier unit that took that Calaban feet turn. So we have this being a last remaining member of one Halberdier unit, and this being the 3 remaining members of the other Halberdier unit, with now the second unit of Stormfall Archers coming in, about to rain down death on these 2 war beasts. And they're focusing their fire on the Wrestler, but maybe taking a cheeky shot at the Mistwalker, but he has decided to just go with the brutal shots onto the Wrestler. Mediocre roll, that one will not do any damage. He's going to take another shot, maybe 1 point, 1 point of damage there. He's really looking for just 1 spike, really. 1 spike is all it's going to take to make his Banshees, and that's a pretty good one. Taking 5 damage there on the Wrestler. And the Wrestler is starting to look somewhat in danger. There we go. So we have the Banshee charging in now. And it might potentially kill the Wrestler in its initial charge attack. So we probably have the big blade going in on the Wrestler. And that will do it. Ladies and gentlemen, the Wrestler has gone down. The Banshee doesn't actually have a lot of focus. I believe it only had 1 focus, which it spent to get the charge. So it's just going to go with probably its offhand weapon. And wow, there we have it, ladies and gentlemen. 2 war beasts removed by the Banshee. And so we had 1 bolt attack. So he had enough. He had enough focus for the charge and to buy 1 last attack on the Mistbeaker, and that Banshee just cleaned house, taking out the Wrestler and also the Blindwalker. The Blindwalker had been taking chip damage over several turns, so it was fairly close to death. But the ranged firepower coming from this AFG and coming from these Stormfall Archers really just put a number on that Wrestler and softened him up to the extent where a single charge attack was enough to take him out. Now I'm thinking he may potentially have actually killed that Wrestler with the small right hand blade on the Banshee and then saved the big one for the Blindwalker. Blindwalker having armor 20 instead of armor 19, but regardless of that, he got the job done in outstanding fashion and with incredible focus efficiency, having spent only 2 focus. So we're seeing a clock shift here. In terms of scenario, there is no scoring going on in this turn, having contested the bottom zone with his Hydra, having contested the middle zone with his Banshee, and the top zone being contested by this Gator posse here, preventing Sveta from scoring that top zone with his Warcaster right here. So we're going to be remaining at 1-0 in terms of control points in favor of Nikolai. He is starting his 4th turn with 19 minutes left on the clock, and Sveta has 14 minutes left on the clock. He just took a reasonably long turn, but I believe it was worth it. He managed to clear a lot of important models. His following turns are going to be going a lot quicker because he has less targets and much simpler activations. It's just going to be advance, shoot your battle engine, reposition back. Advance, shoot your battle engine, reposition back. That's fairly easy in terms of clock and is not going to require a lot of brain time. So the 14 minutes that Sfera has left should be more than enough to finish this game, really. I mean, at the end of the day, all he has to do is kill 4 Gatorman posse and a battle engine, and he has essentially complete control of the table. He potentially we might even be seeing an assassination here, but that may potentially be too greedy. I personally would focus on just reliably winning this game and just clearing the top and middle zone, starting the scenario score, contesting that bottom zone, so that the Gatorman posse here are essentially useless. They will inevitably engage this Hydra, but they are not in a position to do so this turn. So the Hydra will be quite happy to maybe potentially go here, in this position right here. If he were to stand in this position right here, he could contest the bottom zone, help score the top zone, and engage this battle engine. And I think that will be a very good activation for the Hydra next turn, but we'll have to see where the battle engine's going. Here right now, the battle engine is just spending his entire stack in an attempt to kill this Banshee, and he's doing a good job. He's doing a really good job. He's doing a very good job, but not quite enough. Oh wait, this may be it. We have one last attack, and he misses, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh shit.
Oh shit, he proclaims. A statement with which I thoroughly agree. He now has a Banshee with a functioning left arm, which, as all Retribution players know, the left arm on a Retribution Warjack is the best arm, meaning that power 19 is going to be coming in and doing some serious damage to that battle engine. And the problem is, Nikolai doesn't have any attacks that he can bring to bear to do these last 2 boxes of damage on this Banshee. I mean, had he killed this Banshee, the battle engine may have lived to see another turn, and we are going to be seeing a run to engage from Gatorman posse in the south to protect the battle engine from getting double teamed by the Hydra and the still remaining Banshee. Now, this Banshee obviously doesn't have a Cortex, so it's not going to be able to get juiced up, and the mechanics are way too far away to do anything. But what he can actually do is, if he really wants to play it super safe, is he can actually pull this Banshee back, just walk it back, use its gun as it's retreating, and try to screen it and try to get some engineers there to repair it. I've actually done this multiple times, where I've taken one of my own Warjacks completely out of the fight after having taken a whole bunch of damage, and just spent a full turn, next turn, just repairing it with all of my guys before sending it back into battle. And it's incredibly demotivating for your opponent. And it is one of the biggest strengths I think that Retribution has, is their repair ability. The ability for Retribution to repair their own Warjacks, regenerate their shields, and to undo the hard work that your opponent has done, I think is often overlooked ability. So I believe Nikolai has just finished his turn. Yeah, he has. He has in fact finished his turn and shifted the clock, having done his only important activation, that being the battle engine, which failed to kill the Banshee. He also is now left with a empty caster. So we're looking at the AFG now engaging the Sacral Vault with its boosted PAL 16 damage rolls, and is going to do a healthy number of boxes. Let's just take a look. Unfortunately, the glare is going to prevent us from seeing that. That is unfortunate, but I expect that this battle engine is going to get shot off the table by... there we go. It's got about half of its boxes left. We're looking at about I believe 15 boxes left, and the brutal damage archer shots are just pouring in. He's probably now about going to transition to the second unit of archers, and I believe that they should be able to get the job done. And we're going to be looking at Sverre consolidating his position on the board. He is going to start scoring this turn, so he may potentially take the scenario lead this turn, based on whether or not he is able to kill the Sacral Vault. With the firepower he has available, it seems doable, but he may potentially fluff his dice rolls against this Gator Posse in the top zone and fail to score again. So we do in fact have a one mechanic that was able to give him the +2 damage. So now he's rolling with his broken arm to do 2 boxes. He's doing dice damage, and the left is okay, exactly. So the left arm is about to do a 2 dice damage roll. And the left hand is about to... And there goes the Sacral Vault. Thus clearing the zone for Yera, meaning he is going to start scoring this zone. The Banshee is now in thinking about what to do with these Gator Posse. He could potentially do a throw here to try and get 2 Gator Posse for the price of 1. Just casually throwing this Gator to here, which would not only potentially kill these 2 Gator Posse, but also put them in a position whereby they are not going to be able to counter against this Banshee. Potentially, if left alive, this Gatorman could threaten this Banshee. We have a tough roll. We have a successful tough roll. Oh, and we have the tough coming to bite Nikolai in the ass here, because it allowed the Gatorman Posse to stay alive long enough to trigger the chain attack. And the chain attack allowed the Hydra to throw the knocked down Gatorman Posse into his teammate, doing about 5 boxes and knocking down this particular Gatorman Posse right here, which means that he just halved. No, he just took 2/3 of the damage potential of that unit out of the equation. So we're going to be seeing some more damage go down on this top Gatorman Posse, who has, despite all the odds, survived so far. I believe he has approximately 4 boxes left, and is proving to be a real pain in the ass for Sverre right here. Oh wow, he has 6 boxes left. So we may be seeing a situation where K-Bay herself has to get stuck in. And that's what it looks like he may be doing right now, taking a look at whether or not Keylyssa actually has a melee weapon. And if so, what those statistics are. Most Keylyssa players being blissfully unaware of the fact that she does in fact have a POW 12 melee weapon, which is fairly respectable. And she is going to seal the deal here and get the job done when no one else was able to. So, and he's not taking refuge. He's choosing to stay here and score this top zone with Keylyssa. He's going to be scoring this zone, and he's going to be taking the lead on scenario right now, and there isn't much left to activate. Oh, he is going to take the reposition. So there is the refuge onto the hill to threaten the mano el mano assassination next turn. So the 18-inch threat that Keylyssa has is something that you always have to watch out for. It's in the late game something that can be very powerful, because at the end of the day, she is just a walking Iris. She is Iris as a warcaster, and she should be treated with the appropriate respect in that regard. Her personal killing potential is very decent. However, her assassination potential, she does really well at assassinating casters that are a little bit squishy and focused mainly on casting spells to support their army. She's not that great at killing the Butcher 3s or the Asphyxious 3s or the Thyron and those kinds of really tanky frontline casters, mainly because of the high armor. But if you have a caster that has a medium-ish army that usually relies on focus or fury to keep him alive, then you could find yourself on the receiving end of a whole bunch of fury draining boosted POW 10s that can do a surprisingly large amount of damage. So Calaban is having to step up to the plate here to do the job that the battle engine was unable to do, and he is just gonna go ahead and kill this Banshee, and he's going to go for a Bone Shaker on the I believe that is a Fane Knight Scareth. He's gonna, that's right, he's gonna Bone Shaker. He's gonna kill him with the Bone Shaker, and then he's going to use the move to kill a Stormfall Archer. Oh no, that's a mechanic. So having to look up the PS on a mechanic's wrench, he manages to kill a Stormfall Archer with a Bone Shakered Arcanist mechanic. Lovely to see. Absolutely lovely to see. And he's camping 2 Fury. The question is whether or not this is going to be enough to keep him safe. Right now we have the remaining 2 posse members activating, one of them having to forfeit his action because of the knockdown, and then we have a charge attack going in on the Hydra. Unfortunately, it's just giving him extra focus, which, I mean, the Hydra may just use to charge Calaban, taking the free strike and shrugging it off, or potentially even using the free strike to charge its generator. To get another focus to be able to assassinate Calaban in melee, but what we're going to be seeing first is just, I believe, a Keylyssa activation combined with some Fury drainage. He's going to juice up his Hydra to potentially just clear this bottom zone, and then he's going to knock down Calaban with his AFG, and then he is going to shoot him in the face with 7 or so brutal damage Stormfall Archer shots, and that should be the end of it. He has 6 minutes on his clock right now to pull off this assassination, which means that he cannot just sit around. He has to be decisive, and he just has to go and roll dice. He has to make sure not to mess up his order of activations, but considering there are few models left to activate, I think I'm very confident in his ability to pull this one off. In this stage of the game, 5.5 minutes on your clock may not seem like much, but it is more than enough time to get the job done. Sometimes this kind of thing can be pulled off in 60 seconds if you roll quickly. So we're going to be seeing a little bit of hesitation right here. So he's just pulling back Keylyssa, so she's not going to get involved in the... we might not even see an assassination run here. We may simply just be looking at a scenario victory. So he runs in the AFG, and he's not going to go for the assassination. He scores 2 points, bringing himself up to 3, tying the score now on scenario on 3-3. However, Nikolai has nothing left with which to score any zones. All zones being contested. He only has Calaban left, so we're just going to see what he can do. He can't get the assassination because Keylyssa is too far away, unless he manages to kill her in one hit with a Bone Shaker attack from a Halberdier. But that seems very unlikely. So Calaban is just going to get stuck in. He's going to measure his charge range, probably not being aware. Oh, that is just a walk range, exactly. So he's just going to walk into melee with the battle engine, and he's going to try and get some work done. Battle engine being armor 18, he does stand a chance. Let's take a just look at Calaban's melee weapon. He has 2 power 11 melee weapons. With the appropriate boosting, we'll eventually get through a 22 or 24 box battle engine. But he's going to be leaving himself awfully vulnerable, and he also has to take into account that the fact that the battle engine actually does have gunfighter, so it's going to be shooting him in the face at point blank range next turn. So he's going to be trading in his boxes for additional damage die to try and grind down this battle engine, and we're just going to take a look at the top view to see if we can take a look at the damage boxes left on the AFG. It has, I believe, 24 boxes to start with, and we're looking at dice -7 over here. But these are some pretty decent damage rolls. If he keeps this up, he may potentially be able to kill this thing. And then there are no more knockdowns left on the table, and he might be able to survive the retaliatory fire. There we go. We have Calaban single-handedly taking the AFG off the table, like the man that he is, and with the scenario the way that it is, he's going to score. He is going to score, and we're going to be looking at a score of 4-4.
Which round is it? 6 of 7?
6. I believe there is one more round left to play before they reach round 7, and they are going to play it out. Essentially, Nikolai shook hands and conceded because he realizes that his position is completely untenable. Unless Calaban repeats the same trick again here and manages to... Actually, no, he's not going to be able to, because in this turn, Keylyssa is going to score one more point, bringing Sverre to 5, and then he's just going to be able to shift the clock, and there we have the handshake and the GG. So Keylyssa winning on scenario. As the game goes to turn 7, so we have a scenario victory for Keylyssa, 5-4 in turn 7 of the game.
I shot him in the back.
You shot him in. Oh, you killed him with the Hydra.
Yeah.
One shot.
Yeah.
Nice. So we have actually a victory via assassination via the Hydra shots from behind. A classy way to finish the job with the one-hit kill on the Calaban. So congratulations to Sverre for the victory, and let's see how the rest of his team did.
So what was the team score?
They did roughly.
What was the
2-1.
2-1 for you guys? Oh, for the Nordic guys.
Holy
So you're the only winner.
No, he won. Yeah. The Signar third one. We 3
Okay, so the Danes lose to Ragnarok.
Yeah, this game was
Okay.
So, as of course you are aware, this is in fact a team tournament, and the game that was just won by Sverre is a part of the 2 games that, thank you, Team Ragnarok have won to take the win in this first round. So they will advance to the next round, and the Danish dudes will be going into the beer drinking bracket. or may potentially be attempting to submarine their way back up to the top by taking an early loss and then following that up with nothing but victories. I'll be very curious to see how these teams end up, and yeah, thank you all to our audience for watching. We are going to be streaming round 2 and obviously round 3 of this tournament as well. We'll probably be back at about 1 o'clock with the next round. So for now, we are going to call it a day. The staff here are going, and the players here are going to take a break for lunch, and then we will be back at 1 o'clock. Stay tuned, everybody.
Always threatens the assassination, even though it's not that good. It's just like, it's there. Are you sure?